how many points do I have to make that don't add up? How many other people do I have to bring in this conversation that do not back up Rob's? And you can't say that's his version of the story, because we're not talking about two versions of the same story again. We're talking about two wildly different stories. Again, it's these pesky little details that are just going to continue to haunt Rob. There's no way he ever thought a Tier 1 operator was going to come around and nitpick his story for truth. He's not prepared for this.
All right, everybody.
Let's do this.
Welcome to a very special episode of the Anti-Hero Podcast, where we're finally doing a Rob O'Neill breakdown from the our original episode that had nothing to do with Rob O'Neill.
Nothing.
What had happened is that Brent spoke about something about Rob O'Neill for about 2 minutes. I cropped that into a clip, and I'm not going to lie, I knew exactly what I was doing, and that clip went viral. So viral that it made it to Rob O'Neill's phone. Somebody sent it to him. So, Brent, sorry about that.
It happens. And then, again, it upset a lot of people because it was a very short clip. It was a very short clip because, again, that's not what the episode was about.
There was not even a portion of the episode.
And then at the end of the day, I said it. I said what I said. I said it under the the background of me being a Tier 1 operator for a decade and it being very common knowledge in my profession. And it really took me back a little bit of how many people's feelings that hurt. And when they were like, a lot of them were upset that I didn't come with enough evidence or I just said it and left. And so they're right. I said it, and so now I have to come back and back it up.
With us today is a retired law enforcement officer, Mike Ruggiero. He did 35 years in law enforcement, and he has everything under his belt: major crimes, sex crimes, internal affairs, homicide. So, Mike, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, like you said, 35 years in law enforcement. I retired about a year and a half ago. But for about 20 years, I've been also an instructor in various topics, including interview and interrogation and aspects of detecting deception. And as you can see, and as you have there, I also wrote a book on detecting deception called Uncover the Truth.
Yeah, he wrote the book about it.
Yeah.
I think we call that an expert in this field.
Yeah, Brent brought up a good point. We don't, we're a little limited on the amount of proof that we can bring to this podcast about this issue.
Not true.
Well, we were at the time.
Yes.
So with Brent's investigation and with Mike's help, we're going to look at some videos of Rob O'Neill, his testimonies that differ in so many ways every time he tells it, and some people that are close to Rob and are close to his peers on the SEAL teams, and going to hopefully shed light at the bare minimum.
Yeah. Hey, going down this road, from what I thought I knew, based off of people with a lot of first-hand experience, with the type of insider knowledge I had of this, digging into this, I learned a lot. I learned a lot more than I thought I would learn on this. There's a lot to uncover. So
a lot of people they just ask. This is, and I get it. You're an American. Bin Laden's dead. I 100% understand this. But the biggest question that we were getting is, why does it matter? Why does it matter who killed Bin Laden? Bin Laden's dead.
I think that question probably blows my mind the most. I don't know when the truth stopped mattering in America. If you give the sports analogy of this, if Tom Brady throws the game-winning touchdown pass in the Super Bowl, which is what this was. This was a Super Bowl of special operations missions. This was the touchdown pass that won the game, and the backup quarterback goes on a tour saying that he threw the pass and makes millions of dollars on it, and none of his teammates ever come out and say anything publicly against it. America would be in an uproar. Now that scenario doesn't even happen, yet that seems to be the exact scenario that we have. So, of course, it matters.
Yeah, and a lot of people are also saying, well, if you weren't there, not particularly you, but anybody that wasn't there shouldn't speak on it.
That's an interesting viewpoint. I have an opinion about O.J. Simpson, and I wasn't there. Mike, do you have an opinion about O.J. Simpson?
Sure. Yes, I do.
You weren't there. How dare you?
Right.
Was he innocent or guilty? Do you dare make a claim on what you think about it?
Yes, you do so based on the evidence that you have.
Interesting.
I thought he was going to say he was. Wouldn't that be crazy if he was innocent?
Yeah, I wasn't in Vietnam. I have an opinion on Vietnam.
Yeah.
That has never stopped anyone from having. Cops aren't there when they solve crimes.
Right.
Yet they have an opinion on the crime based on the evidence that they
Based
collect.
on the investigation, sure.
Yeah.
So that to me that those are very narrow, and people whose minds will probably never change.
Yeah.
They it's their truth. They don't want to know any different, and there's nothing we can do about those people.
Well, like what we were talking about earlier, only in any profession, the only people that really can call someone out and really are allowed to are people in those professions, right? Like this whole thing was very hard for me because I'm not in that community, never was in that community. A lot of people ask me like, oh, you're, he's an American hero and stuff. And this, but I feel the same way as like law enforcement. Like I jokingly call out a lot of cops, cops that don't do a very good service to the badge, aren't there enforcing law. They're selfish. They dance, all that stuff, but it'd be the same thing as if like in my career field, right? Let's say this is a very routine call. I respond, little kid, not breathing, CPR.
Yeah.
I do CPR for a couple minutes until my buddy gets there because we're still beating fire department. And I go, hey, man, I'm going to tag you in. I tag him in, right? So I get up and go do something else while FD shows up. Well, camera footage, everything is my backup given CPR, right? So, okay, now let's say that this case blows up. Maybe it was somebody's child that was very important, right? So now this guy, what if he was the one that gets the award for the life-saving CPR, even though I had brought, right? I'm not going to care that much to be the one where I'm like, no, that was me. I'm going to be silent. I'm going to be a silent professional about it and let this person decide whether or not they want to do the right thing, right? So,
Well, there's more. That's a good analogy, but there's a lot more to it than this. When I talk to a lot of former members of SEAL Team 6, and they reached out to me and said, "Man, I really appreciate what you said. Everyone knows that's the truth. Thanks for doing it." And I would say, "Awesome. You want to come help me out on this interview?" They're like, "Well, you can talk about that mission. That wasn't your mission. You're not going to get PNG'd from your command talking about another mission."
What's PNG?
Persona non grata. It means you are no longer allowed to come back to the command. You can't step foot on the command. And once a year, they have people, come back. And there's certain occasions that people can come back to the command. Even if you spent 10, 15, 20 years there, you just can't go back to the command and hang out with the boys like you can kind of as a police officer. It's it's a top secret unit. You're not going anywhere. But this one time, or these few times you can, people relish that. And to have that pulled from you, and if you talk, it means a lot to people. And it also means their reputation is on the line. And so they're not going to talk about it for those reasons. Rob O'Neill's PNG'd and can't go back to the command.
He is?
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
And they're not going to chance that.
So they're not going. So Rob O'Neill's teammates, or maybe not people that are on mission, but people that knew all about it and all the details, they're not going to risk getting PNG'd coming out with this. It's not worth it to them.
It's not worth it to them. In fact, it got so serious. Years ago when this, when he first came out, they were told not to have any contact with him, and if you do, there would be punishments. And one guy let him stay at his house and lost his team over. He was a team leader, and they said, "Nope, you're not making good decisions. You're hanging out with Rob O'Neill. We're going to pull your team." So he is not in good standing at the command.
So for
And
layman's
we're
terms,
going to lay out all the reasons why he's not.
he's denounced from the community.
He'll come out and argue and say, yeah, well, the Craven, backed it up, and I put it to, my book was approved by DOD. Those things, the people who know the story best and who know what shouldn't be talked about is, as always, isn't those high level commands. It's the first level command, which is the unit that he worked for. They PNG'd him. The only thing they're looking at a DOD level is revealing top secret information. They're not going through and validating the story. They're just looking for specific things. And I forget what was McRaven or whatever high official that he's going to come and say, well, he validated my story. Generals and admirals know the least about what's happening on the ground, and we're going to tell a bunch of stories about the ground truth, and that's pretty sure that's what everyone's going to go with.
Yeah, so a lot of this tonight is going to be we have to talk about Rob's version of the story, multiple versions of the story, because we have to dissect it. So when we're talking about how Rob was the only guy in the room, or Rob was doing this, or Rob did this, Rob didn't do most of it, but in order for us to dissect his argument and prove that he's not being truthful, we have to talk about that. So, personally a lot of the guys that were on, and I'm going to sound like a civilian, but SEAL Team 6,
I know a handful of those guys. I was on jump trips with them. Some of them were on combat missions with me. I've been on large training exercises with them. I still run across them in the contracting world when I still do contracts. So I don't know all of them by any means, but I can assure you I know a lot more of them than our listeners, and and that's going to sound like a jerk, but that's just the truth. That's why, again, I'm a tier 1 operator. I'm friends with those guys. I've heard their version of the story, guys that were on target, guys that heard it firsthand, and never once did any of them say, you know what, we're not a big fan of him, but Rob O'Neill was the shooter, and that's the truth. Never once. Yeah. I said it a lot different when I was like, they just didn't say that, like, oh yeah, I know him. He didn't give him the good guy, comment, because that snippet wasn't about this, so I didn't go deep enough. I wasn't looking to defend that comment off that. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, of all of the ones I've ever spoken to about this, and this topic always gets brought up, never once did anyone corroborate Rob's version, and I know that. So, in our comment sections, just like you said, people were talking like they know some of these guys. These guys will be the first one to tell you they're human beings, so they're not celebrities. They're being praised as celebrities in the comment section. I think rightfully so. But one of them, everybody says was there and knows everything, is DJ Shipley. And some people are saying that he's actually the shooter. And I don't know much about him other than the stuff I've seen, but you know who he is? Yeah, it's funny you bring up DJ is one of the guys I know. DJ's a friend of mine. I can reach out to DJ anytime. DJ was in that troop. He's out in the spotlight. He talks about it. Or he talks about being from the command and training. DJ's a great dude. DJ was I can tell you did not shoot Osama bin Laden, and I'm pretty sure he's been on record saying that he didn't, and that he wasn't even on the mission. In fact, I can tell you personally from talking to DJ, because like I said, this conversation comes up all the time when a Delta Force guy and a SEAL Team 6 guy get together. It's just a common ground to talk about. And he was in Red Squadron. He was in Red Squadron at the time, but he wasn't even on the mission. Like I said, if anyone who's out there commenting that, I'm pretty sure he's come out publicly and said that. So you can just Google that or go ask him. He's not hard to find.
All right, so we're gonna move into who says different, who has publicly came out and at least said about Rob's story.
Well, there's one thing I want to do before we get into it. I want to delineate, what I'm doing here and what I'm trying to say about Rob. Rob is an American war hero. I'm not taking that away from Rob. Rob has 2 silver stars. One from the raid from UBL. He didn't get the silver star for shooting UBL. Everyone on that, it was a mission award that everyone got, and rightfully so. But his truly valorous silver star, anytime that silver star gets brought up in some sort of conversation, every guy says he was a hero that day. He was badass here on that silver star. He served his country honorably as a Whiteside SEAL member. He served his country honorably as a Tier 1 operator, which is an amazing feat that should never be taken away from him. I do not have a problem with. I'm not saying he was dishonest in this one piece of one mission the guy was on, and 399 missions of everything else that he's done is crap. And I just want to make that absolutely clear. I'm not here to personally break him down as a man. But at the end of the day, you can do all those things and be that amazing, but it does not give you the right to take away valor from someone else on a mission and make millions of dollars on something you didn't do. And that has to be corrected. So I want everyone to know that. This isn't personal. I don't even know Rob, but this is the right thing to do. So that being said, you said there was a lot of people that seemed to be taken back that this was the first time they had ever heard that Rob O'Neill was not the guy who shot Osama bin Laden.
Wait, let me. Did you have anything? Did you know anything about this narrative that maybe he didn't, or did you, like me and everybody else, think like, oh yeah, it was Rob O'Neill?
No, quite honestly, I mean, obviously, I knew the basics of the mission and Osama bin Laden being shot and killed in this mission, but I didn't know any of the specifics. I hadn't. I'm not in the community,
right?
And I hadn't really looked at it or examined anything up until recently here.
There you have it.
Yeah, like I said, that's interesting to me. But like I said, I lived in a world that was very closed off, and what's common to me isn't common to other people.
Right.
Let's go down the list again. I'm not the first person, far from it, of who has made such a claim.
Konnichiwa, bitches. I'm here to tell you about Refracted Wolf Apparel. Founded in 2021, Refracted Wolf Apparel is outsider apparel for the front lines, right? So whether or not you're a first responder, you're military, or you're a veteran, or you're a nurse, or a corrections officer, or a dispatcher, we're all public servants. Sometimes that shit sucks and it can get super dark. So our clothing line and our artwork and our graphic tees, we kind of represent that. We just become outsiders to our own cultures. Whether or not you're a SWAT guy, we got you. Street cop guys, we got you. Crusty old veterans, we got you. We got everything you need. Hats, stickers, flags, especially graphic tees. We got all of them. Use Anti-Hero for 15% off Refracted Wolf Apparel.
Let's go down here. Let's go down the list. I've compiled a small list. There's an investigative reporter by the name of Matthew Cole. He worked for the Intercept. He came out with a report called The Crimes of SEAL Team 6. It got a lot of traction in our community. That's another one of those things. Have you ever heard of that?
No, sir.
Blows my mind. It was all the rave in the special operations community when it came out. There are other things they talk about that I don't care to discuss. But he does talk about the Bin Laden raid. This was 2 years of investigative reporting, and he talked to over 18 former and current members of SEAL Team 6. So this is a large pool to draw from. Did a lot of work, and this is what he had to say. As he approached the third floor bedroom, Red. Now, Red is commonly referred to, what is always referred to as the point man is also commonly referred to as Red. And Red is not DJ Shipley. Red is not Rob O'Neill because of his red hair. Red is the point man. Red saw bin Laden standing in the doorway peering out. He was unarmed and wearing pajamas. A few of his female relatives were nearby. Red came to a stop and fired 2 shots with his suppressed rifle. One shot hit bin Laden in the chest, and the second shot glanced off his hip or thighs. Bin Laden stumbled backward into the room and fell toward the foot of his bed. That is the story I've heard over and over. Red, the point man, shot him in the chest. He stumbled in. Everyone else did a pile-on shooting. So this investigative reporter, without a Tier 1 background and getting an easy access to Tier 1 operators like I did, somehow gets to the same truth that the community already knew.
Can I ask you
Yeah.
a question?
Yeah.
Is it common when operators dump a room like that? Is it common for everybody to put some rounds on target?
Absolutely. It's called, we call it pile-on shootings.
Okay.
But if I'm passing a dead body or that dead body is in my sector, as I sweep my sector, 100%, I'm putting rounds into them as well. Very rarely does just one person shoot a guy. Very rarely. It goes on a little bit more detail. We'll just go into it and just again, I'll validate from a tactical level, which is what I'm here to do. If what he says makes sense. Red watched bin Laden fall. He later told his teammates that it was possible one arm was twitching reflectively as he died, but otherwise he was effectively dead. That is true. You hit someone and you drop them with a good nervous system shutdown shot, one right in the center of the chest that hits the spine or right in the face. And you either get an immediate drop and no movement, or sometimes you get a little bit of twitching. So that checks out in my book. It was Red's job to make most important tactical judgment because he largely blocked the view of the SEALs behind him. That is true as a point man. According to several former members of SEAL Team 6, the most basic principle of assault training is follow your shot. That's absolutely right. And I'll tell you what follow your shot means. It means whoever shot into that room, it means you want to continue the momentum of that violent action in there. And so whoever shoots into that room, especially, which is more likely going to be the point man because he's in front of everyone, he's going to follow his shot. He's going to go into that room. So that checks out. Follow your shot. Meaning that the operator who fired on target must ensure the target no longer poses a threat. Red could see bin Laden bleeding out from his chest wound, but he still had not entered the bedroom. So he makes these shots before entering, which is normal. Then as 2 bin Laden eldest daughters began to scream, Red quickly corralled them. Move forward a little bit. And O'Neill or 2 or 3 assaulters moved past Red. So Red is obviously the first one in the room. He moves these females out of the way. O'Neill and 2 or 3 other more assaulters move past Red into the bedroom where bin Laden lay on the ground. And it's interesting here. It says O'Neill then fired 2 rounds according to his own description. So he's the only person who says that. I think it says the first 2 rounds hit bin Laden's forehead. Then O'Neill canoed bin Laden with a final shot. According to my sources, O'Neill was the number 4 man of the room. So even if that's what he did, he was the 4th person to shoot him and probably put in the 8th, 9th, and 10th shots into bin Laden.
Which is going to differ extremely from what Brent tells you later.
The SEALs had been specifically asked to avoid shooting bin Laden in the face. I've been on missions, and in fact, I've been scolded for shooting people in the face after they're down. So pile-on shootings, we want to preserve their face. So for the SSE, for the evidence, we can say yes. Never have they ever said, if that's the only shot he gives you, or you think your life's in danger and it's a suicide bomber, you can't shoot him in the face. You absolutely can shoot him in the face. But if they're lying on the ground already wounded and you have a choice of where you shoot him, it's not in the face. So I believe that. SEALs have been specifically asked to avoid shooting bin Laden in the face. O'Neill's decision to canoe the Al-Qaeda leader made him unrecognizable. That's interesting. We'll talk about making him unrecognizable later. A SEAL who spoke Arabic asked the wives and daughters, and that's how they got their PID. Here's something else I really want to bring up from this 2-year investigation with 18 members of SEAL Team 6. They all had the same story, enough for him to post this out. The Red Squadron assaulters later gathered in a private area of Bagram Air Base where they debriefed the mission in front of the military lawyer and the squadron commanding officer who recorded on a cell phone. Let me fast forward here to the parts that matter. During the debrief, Red was identified as having hit bin Laden with a fatal shot. O'Neill was only credited with putting security rounds into bin Laden after he was already down. There was no discussion of a visible weapon. We'll talk about that later. Make a note of that. No claims that one of bin Laden's wives have been used as a shield or threat. Make a note of that. This is so the whole troop came back, and not one of them ever talked about using her as a human shield or talked about a weapon. The raid, several of the SEALs said afterwards, was one of the easiest missions they've ever conducted. There were no heroics, and apart from Al-Kuwaiti's shots, no firefight. That just actually goes to show the amount of war these guys have actually seen. And yeah, I'm certain that's right. It probably wasn't the hottest target they've ever been on, but it was the most important target they were ever on. So we've done a good job of explaining how not just me, but now an investigative reporter with 2 years and 18 former SEAL Team 6 members also contradict his story. Speaking of him, Matt Cole, this is him on the Team House, a podcast, going a little more into depth about it and showing what one of his sources said.
On Twitter about a year ago, a member of the unit who was there confirmed my version of what was reported, what the version that's in this book.
It's really all we need. We can stop right there. Someone else, after he had put it out, confirmed to him again that is the truth. And I'll read it right here, what he says. Rob did not shoot UBL first. The first man in the room shot him center mass first, which already corroborates with what we've been talking about. Biss shot center mass second. Don't worry, we're going to get to Matt Biss. Rob was number 4. Rob was number 4 from someone who was actually there. Rob did shoot him in the head after 3 others shot him. We had agreed not to shoot head or face to preserve for ID reasons, which I'm pretty sure didn't make him a very popular person afterwards. So,
And you said you're going to get in a PID later?
yes, we'll get into that. I don't normally call a terrorist's wife as a star witness, but it is interesting. Just a few years ago, that Amal bin Laden actually came out and made a statement about the night the SEALs raided her house. And here it is. When the Navy team entered the room, she tried to rush them. Now, this is actually, like I said, we'll see what Matt Bissonnette says later, but spoiler alert, he says every female on target was aggressive that night. Every female. He doesn't talk about one female sitting there quietly and silently as a human shield. He talks about all of them being very aggressive. And even in Amal's words, she says she tried to rush them. Let's see what that got her. That got her shot in the leg. But was shot in the leg, and she passed out from the pain. When she came back to, bin Laden was already dead.
Wait, so she was shot in the leg, fell down, passed out, and then when she came to, bin Laden was already dead.
Correct. And in case people have the attention span of an average American and don't wait for the rest of this interview, Rob O'Neill is very consistent of saying that she was used as a human shield during the standoff of Rob O'Neill and Osama bin Laden. But according to her, according to Matt Cole and 18 other former unit members and Matt Bissonnette, that is absolute, and me. And in fact, The next person I'll talk about is an actual teammate of Rob O'Neill, who unfortunately asked not to be identified. I asked him some questions, which he was more than comfortable answering those questions to me.
I have seen these. These are real.
Oh yeah, you've seen me on the phone all the time, talking to all these guys, asking them
these messages.
And I asked him at any point, because he didn't just come back from this mission and immediately left the SEAL community. He stayed in Red Squadron for a little bit. They moved him over to a different squadron, and he eventually got out. And I said, during his time there, when you were a teammate of his, did he ever claim to have killed the killer of bin Laden, the one man in a room, while you were his teammate, either privately in the team or in front of the troop? Because if it's true, it would just be common knowledge. He laughed and said, no, Rob O'Neill never said that in front of other operators and in front of Red Squadron. So when people are saying it's, I'm the first person they've ever heard say this, you're just not looking. Here's another person with a lot of followers. He just didn't say it as bold as I did. Andy Stumpf was a member of SEAL Team 6, and let's see what he has to say as someone in the community and from the actual command.
Hey, so were you at the, that was you, like I heard the shot ring. Yeah. Full on.
There's no dispute, from my understanding, internally. The dispute is more about what has been put into the public record.
Got it. Yeah. Which I could see.
There's a small group of people that were actually on the ground. I don't think there's any confusion about what actually happened.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that there are competing narratives that were very highly elevated is more the issue.
He said it in the nicest way he could, that
There's dispute.
There's dispute.
Yeah.
He was very cordial in saying it. But then again, he's not going to come in and say a lot about it. He probably wants to be able to go back to the command.
Do you think it kind of rubs these guys the wrong way at minimum? When they hear somebody that just doesn't know. They don't know. Like if they heard, me and Mike talking, like, oh my God, Rob O'Neill, do you think it like kind of irks them to the point where they want to just go, hey guys?
How can it not? He didn't have, that was just, a very relaxed podcast. He could have easily let that go.
That's true.
So obviously it does. He could have easily let that go, but he couldn't let it go. He had to, at least very professionally, say, that's just not the way, the people on the mission are saying it went down. Kind of paraphrase him a little bit. So,
yeah, because what he was saying is that the narrative's disputed. What was put into the public view, it's not actually what happened. There's no confusion about what happened on the ground with anybody involved.
And there's always a little bit of truth to every story. Her getting shot in the leg, in fact, was something Rob O'Neill has talked about before, that she was shot in the leg. So he admits that, even though she was shot in the leg and being used as a human shield. We'll get into that later. There's a little bit of a teaser, but again, there's always of course, there's a lot of truth to his story. I'm not saying that every part. The guy was on the mission. My gosh, a lot of the stuff he said was true.
Right.
But there are parts which we will dive into that just don't make sense. Not just if I haven't gone down the list enough to make people understand. It's not just me. It's a lot of other people. If you want more facts, just hold on. I got them. He does like to go back into his corner and say, well, you weren't there. It was just me.
He says that?
Yes. Well, that's his, what he said it, and that's what people say. Yeah. And that was one of the things. Well, in fact, he called me jealous. And
like you guys are sixth grade girls. You're just jealous, Brent.
that one's, I'm trying to be professional about it.
That one's
no, it didn't sting. It was an interesting comeback because if anyone ever came and questioned something I did on target, I can't imagine my response being to a SEAL Team 6 guy going, "Oh, you were just jealous. You went on that target."
Yeah.
I would just, how about not acknowledging it if it's that ridiculously far from the truth? How about, well, you could call one of my 17 teammates. I use all sorts of ways I would go about that other than just calling them jealous. I just found that to be a very interesting response from him. But then again, I would be able to call my teammates to back up my version of the story. He always says you can't prove differently, but he hasn't come out with anyone else proving his version of the story there either on target.
And another thing too that
He always wants the burden of proof on you.
Yeah. Another thing that he did is that when this came out, went viral, right? He's Rob O'Neill. He's Hollywood Rob, Showtime Rob, he's been on Fox News, movies made about him. He's probably advised on some of these movies. What people couldn't wrap their head around was the fact that this clip went viral, ended up on his phone, and he got upset about it and messaged us about, whoa, dude, what are you saying this for? Like, everybody was like, dude, we're a little menial podcast. He would have been like, okay. And he got super upset.
After this, he's going to wish he let it go. I wouldn't be doing this right now if he would have just...
Brent's had like 6 hours sleep in a week.
Let it go. Because that's not true. It's not because the truth matters. He just nudged me over the edge to do this, and more or less probably the fans that or the people that you kept on coming to me about the comment section. I didn't care enough to read the comment section, but you did a good job of constantly reminding me of the comment section and asking me what I thought. And so when he says you weren't there, and people say you weren't there, you don't get an opinion on it. I'm glad you asked. There was as if those people forget about a man named Matt Bissonnette who was on target and has absolutely came out publicly and walked this mission out step by step. So it doesn't even have to be, a hearsay, and it doesn't even have to be a 2 years of investigative reporting and 18 people. It doesn't even have to be a teammate of Rob O'Neill that I personally spoke to, or my history of 10 years as a Tier 1 operator speaking to people in the profession. If that's not enough for you, let me give you someone who was on the mission, Matt Bissonnette. And Mike, if you could, I'm going to look at this through a tactical level and just make sure everything he says makes sense. And if you could look for signs of deception, which is what you do best, and let's see what Matt Bissonnette says. There's no reason to go through the whole mission. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of dispute if the helicopter crashed. Not a lot of dispute about anything that happens until about the stairwell. So that's where we're going to start.
And his wife jumped in front of him. And all the women on target were very hostile, something very different than what we see after.
All the women on target were very hostile.
Mm-hmm.
According to Rob, there was one on target that was very docile, even though she was shot in the leg. But so Matt Bissonnette says all women on target were hostile. I can confirm that I've been on targets and high-level targets where the women do not like you there, and sometimes they're more uppity than the men are.
Afghanistan or Iraq, you typically don't see the women that are this aggressive and hostile. Even though the females that come out of this building and talk to us, they were still very combative and upstairs. And it's quiet, it's pitch black in the house, no lights, all night vision.
Quiet, pitch black in the house. They chose this mission because it was a zero loom night. It means there was no moon. It was as pitch black as possible. So that also means your nods don't work as well as they normally do because your nods need it amplifies the light that is there.
Right.
And so this isn't white phosphor 2018 nods that are high definition, white and black. These are still green nods that are still better than the 7 deltas. If anyone use 7 deltas in the 82nd, but it is going to hamper. It gives you the advantage of complete darkness, which is what they'll take. but it does affect your nods a little bit.
Get to the second floor. Intel had said we think that Khalid, his son, lives on the second floor.
This is Osama bin Laden's son.
Yeah. The guy in front of me who's point man. He sees a head pop out and disappear really quick around the corner. It's like, okay, what do you think? I don't know. He literally whispers, not amped up, not yelling, not anything. He whispers, hey, Khalid. He whispers Khalid's name. Doesn't know if it's Khalid or not. Khalid literally looks back around the edge of the hall and he shoots him.
So in this version of the story, and I know at the end of the day there will be different versions. I don't expect everyone to have a 100% version, right? Like there can be different versions of the same stories, but there can't be two wildly different stories.
Right.
Okay. So right now, Matt Bissonnette does not say that the point man, who is Red, which was already talked about, Red is the point man, that he speaks in two different languages. I just want to point that out. We'll talk about that later. He just says Khalid, and he sticks his head out and shoots him at close range right in the face.
What was Khalid thinking at that time? You look around the corner, curiosity killed the cat. I guess Khalid too.
I will say this. I believe that's true. I've heard that story many times. To have the wherewithal to fake out the son of Osama bin Laden and say his name is brilliant. I mean, that's
Right.
a tier 1 move right there. I mean, if people hear that story and then it's just kind of a story, like from someone who's been on these missions and on the ground, and to have the wherewithal to know who all the sons are, at what floor you're going to know that you'll meet them, and then to go, I could use my speed to get around this corner and get into kind of a 50-50 gunfight and hope I win, or I can just outsmart them and see if I can make them peek around the corner. That just can't be glossed over. That's
Right.
a pro move right there. That is
Right.
a pro move.
It had been 15 minutes since the crash. It was now about 1:15 a.m. Give me a sense of what the...
So, nice and slow, and we head upstairs.
Khalid is dead on this landing. The point man is stepping past Khalid, and now you're number 2 in the stack. You're right behind the point man.
Yep.
Point man's Red, right?
So the point man is Red. Matt Bissonnette identifies himself as the number 2 man, but I've heard Matt Bissonnette from other people say that he was the 2 man. In fact, and I also believe was Matt Cole, and that said that he was the 2 man.
Trying to look around him, hear him take a couple shots, kind of see a head, somebody disappear back into the room.
The point man had seen someone stick his head out a door and shot him just the way he shot Khalid.
Yep.
Now, I hate to keep stopping it, but I have to set something up for later. In order for this to be true, for him to see Osama bin Laden poke his head out, let me lay out to you what the third floor looked like. When they get to the top of the third floor, it's in the very middle of the house. And so it's a long hallway that goes all the way to the outside patio. And there's a room to the right and left, right across from each other. And we'll call that room 1 and 2. And there's another room 3 and 4 further down. So each corner of that house on the third floor has a room.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4 with a hallway going down it. Rob talks about at the top of the stairwell there being a green cloth that you can't see through. Well, if that green cloth was there, then Red, the point man from the stairwell, couldn't have looked into bedroom 1, the first bedroom to the right of the hallway. So it's clear to me that this, from deductive reasoning, he had a clear shot. He saw a man in the doorway. He takes it.
What did you do then? Inside the room, I could see a body laying on the ground. Over him was 2 females, real close to the door. They looked up and saw the point man. He steps in to the room, literally rushes the 2 two women, grabs one under each arm, and pushes them back against the far wall. So
let's talk about that real quick. And I'm not revealing top secret tactics. This is basic CQB 101. They just do it better than tier 1 operators. Just do it better than everyone else. We talked about this already in the Intercept article about following your shots. So it's what he does. This article backs up Matt Bissonnette's story. So along with everyone who's ever told me this story, backs up this version so far. The point man, Red, his job is, once he takes that shot into the room, is to follow his shot. We already talked about that. Once as a lead man you get into the room, you have two immediate jobs. One is to clear the immediate threat, anything within arm's distance of being in that room, and that's exactly what these two girls are. They're an immediate threat. They're at the threshold of this room. Some people are going to say that he believes them to be a suicide bomber and that he potentially gives his life by throwing himself on these potential body bombers and puts himself in between him and the assault team.
Was that how you would handle a suicide bomber?
No. Red's shown himself to be really good at shooting people in the head. If he believed them to be a suicide bomber, he'd have shot them both in the head, which would have been shot 3 and 4 to the head, or at least kill 3 and 4 in about 15 seconds. Red clearly has no problem shooting people. He's done it very quickly and accurately to this stage. What he's doing is he's clearing the immediate threat, and then he's driving them to his corner. Nothing gets between a tier 1 operator and his corner. Nothing. So he is. If you can't identify that they're a threat, then they're coming with you. And so he does exactly what he's been trained to do thousands and thousands of times. It's happened to me on target. Turn the corner. There's someone. It's too close. I can't identify what they are or aren't, and I just drive them to the corner with me, making room for the other assaulters to come do their job in the room. He's doing what tier 1 guys do.
they did have a suicide vest on, and they did blow themselves up, that wouldn't affect the rest of the guys.
But it would have killed him.
Yeah.
I'm also not saying there's no way that wasn't his line of thinking. Only Red can tell us what his line of thinking was. It would take him to come out here and clear all this up, although everyone wishes he would. He's not going to, right? Let me tell you who wishes and prays that Red never comes out, and that's Rob O'Neill.
But the general feeling that you're getting from this this week of research is that Red's probably never going to come out.
Oh, I've been on several phone calls with his teammates and asked. I don't know him personally, and asked if they would put me in touch with Red, and they just laughed and said, "Red doesn't want to talk to you. He doesn't want to talk to anyone, not even as a fellow tier 1 operator. He's just he was the perfect man for Rob to put in his story and he knew that because he's never going to talk." So he may have thought that. I mean, there's always a chance he may have, but tactically, that's what he's doing.
You stepped into the room and saw the man lying on the floor. What did you do?
Myself and the next assaulter we both engaged him several more times, and then rolled off and then continued clearing the room.
When you say you engaged him, what do you mean?
Fire.
We'll stop there just real quick. He did exactly what I talked about, especially when he's the center of the room, so he's in everyone's sector. The 2-man's going to come in and put 2, 3, 4 rounds in him. The 3-man's going to come in, do the same thing. The 4-man's going to come in, do the same thing. So checks out tactically.
You shot him.
Yeah.
He's still moving.
A little bit, but you couldn't see his arms, couldn't see his hands, so he could have had something, could have had a hand grenade or something underneath his chest.
So after Osama bin Laden is wounded, he's still moving. You shot him twice.
A handful of times.
A handful of times, and the steel in the stack behind you also shot Osama bin Laden, and at that point his body was still.
Yes.
Did you recognize him?
No. Everybody thinks it was like, it's him. No. To us at that time, it could have been anybody. Maybe this is another brother. Maybe this is a bodyguard. Maybe it doesn't matter. The point is to just continue continue clearing.
Let's stop right there. We gotta unpack this. He says a lot that's important. He says initially they could not tell it was him. Well, they couldn't tell it was him because they're still clearing. This is room 1 of 4 rooms on the second shelf, third floor. They don't just stop and go, hey, he was kind of tall. Let's stop and look into this. They're still in a clearing mode. The 2, 3, and 4 man that came in, and going by the story that 2 years of investigations and 18 other SEALs from the command said, which was Rob as the 4 man and canoes him in the face 3 times while he's laying on the ground, already shot and already dead. That's going to cause an issue. You're going to think you can easily tell, that's Osama bin Laden. When he's shot in the head 3 times, they're not easy to identify. I've been on missions where I've had weeks to study a guy's face, and we've taken him alive, and we've all sat in the room and gone, hey, this is him, right? And you put the picture right next to the guy, and yeah, it's him. Look at his eyebrows. No, hold on. Look at his nose, though. Look at his lips. Like, it takes a little bit to be sure. To be sure. Now, let's take that as a guy shot in the head, and it is very difficult to PID that guy. Been on those missions. You're trying to put his face together as best you can to look at it, and it's just not that easy. You think it would be really easy to PID a guy. When you shoot him in the face with these rounds, these particular rounds, I don't want to get too detailed into the type of rounds we use, but I will say they are special rounds, and they create a lot of havoc.
One of the things that I think people have a misconception of is that are the photos that we think we see, they're altered. They're not real, right? They've
never released the actual photos of the of the Bin Laden raid.
So if you think you've seen, which we've all seen them, if you think you've seen Osama bin Laden shot in the head and dead, you have not seen it.
I've seen him.
Well, you've seen the real photos.
I've seen him. It's his nose is over here. He's got kind of water on his face. In fact, it's funny. He's about to tell you why there's water on his face. Let's keep going.
By now, 20 minutes had passed. Every single thing the woman with the CIA had told them on the plane had been right, but time was running out. Throughout the raid, the remaining helicopter was in the air. It only had enough gas to stay for 30 minutes or so. Pakistani neighbors had discovered the SEALs posted outside the compound wall. As time was slipping away, Mark Owen and a couple of other members of SEAL Team 6 kneeled around a mangled body on the 3rd floor of the house in Abbottabad, Pakistan. Everything the CIA analysts told them about the raid on Osama bin Laden's house had checked out exactly as she said. But was this bin Laden?
In my mind, he looked way younger than I thought he was going to be. His beard wasn't gray at all. I studied lots of photos of him, and they were always gray. His beard was dark black.
That's huge. We can't ignore that. His beard was black. That's going to come into account later. Let me tell you why. My assumption of why his beard is black. He's a 6'4" Arab. Not a lot of them. A lot of them are short.
Right.
He's in a country he shouldn't be in. He doesn't necessarily have the protection. He probably does, but he knows he's a wanted man and doesn't have complete protection. The walls on this compound were very tall. They talk about it. Even the 3rd floor wall for the balcony was actually a full-size wall, so he could walk out. He could walk out there, get some fresh air, but his head never go above the wall. So if you can't hide your height, I'll just talk to you as a police officer. What can you hide?
Well, your appearance, your general
appearance.
Well, here's another thing about a cop. This right here should show how important it is when you hear a story and someone says, this is what they look like. I'm telling you, this is what they look like. And then you find out that that person didn't look like that at all. They're talking about the same person, but I was robbed by a guy with a gray beard, and he actually had a black beard. You both know you're talking about the same person, but now you lose so much in that case. Whether and you might even lose faith in that case and faith in that victim because you're like, you told me you saw him from me to you, and he had a different colored beard than what we're seeing. So
because the details matter, and what I also find interesting about this, there's no reason for him to lie about this really unique
detail.
It'd be a very odd thing to lie about and be like,
Right.
you know what? His beard was jet black.
in your experience, would anybody? That's not common, right? For someone, a third party not being investigated, not just someone that you're talking to, like a witness. Is that odd, or is that just
Add
Well,
random details.
Right. I mean, people are going to have different perceptions, and people are going to have, describe the events differently. Not everybody's going to be, of course, lockstep when you interview witnesses to an event. So different people are going to include different details. As long as the details don't conflict or contradict each other, that's when you sort of have some issues that you definitely need to iron out.
Okay. So he's got a black beard. Make note.
Identifiably, he was very tall. So, okay, I can kind of chalk that up as something.
Bin Laden was about 6'4".
Right. His nose, to me, was something that I could kind of identify. So, kind of looking at the profile shots and everything, I was like, okay, I was pretty sure that was him. But, I'm not willing to make that call. Certainly not at that point.
So he's been looking at him on the ground. These three people have post-mission, but his face is splayed open, and he's still not willing to make this call yet. Again, just make note of that. That's exactly how it happens.
that's how
and
important it was to him?
That's how confusing it is in the real world.
No, but he made the decision not to make the call because of how important it is.
Well, absolutely. In this particular mission, they could not be wrong. They
Yeah.
could not be wrong.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the circumstances of what he's talking about, it's a completely dark room. You have somebody who's been shot. You haven't had the chance to really examine him like you're talking about, holding a picture next to somebody and things like that. You haven't had that chance yet. So certainly to say that you have a positive ID on somebody would ring untrue.
In fact, he's crumpled over. I mean, they would have had to extend him out, to even see that he was 6'2".
Right.
Our point is, and that we're all saying, can all agree on, no one's going to walk until they start cleaning him up, spreading him out,
Turning lights on
with their flashlights.
Sure.
And until that happens, no one's just walking in seconds later after he's shot and saying, "That's Osama bin Laden curled up in a ball with his head split open."
Yeah.
Well,
No.
someone says that happened, but
even
it's
in
not.
a dark room, when your head's not split open, it's hard to identify somebody.
So again, and that's not what Matt Bissonnette is saying. So it checks out.
Not willing because Owen says they suspected the president was listening at the White House, and he was right. The helicopter crash had been reported up the chain of command. Owen says the SEALs wanted proof before anyone said anything on the radio about killing Osama bin Laden. They turned to one of the SEALs in the room who spoke Arabic.
So he moved out to where the women and kids were, grabs one of the younger kids, says, "Hey, who is that inside?" She says, "Osama." "Osama who?" "Osama bin Laden." The child. The child.
And that's exactly how we normally get our PID for sure. Is we take a woman and kids, and we have a translator come up and talk to them, and then ask him who is that, and we'll get our second identification. Again, that's how you identify an important person on a tier 1 target. It's a process, and everything tactically, Matt Bissonnette said right now makes sense. And I'm not just saying that just because that's the same story I've heard from all his teammates personally, and from all the other things I've proven to you before that checks out. But I'm glad to have you here as what do you say deception wise? Are there any parts of that story where you're like, he gets iffy on these details, or you don't like the or you can there's a sign of deception that you can see?
No, with this particular story, no, I don't really see a whole lot in it. No, I mean it sort of rings true. There's no obvious signs of either verbal or nonverbal deception with him.
Okay, well, moving on. Let's see how Yeah, as always, everyone's like, well, you have to be there. We want to hear it from the guys on the ground. We just heard it from a guy on the ground, and his story seems to check out. We're gonna fast forward this to the part that matters, which is the part in the stairwell. Let's hear what Rob has to say.
So she was right, and it turned out she was 100% right on every single person in and out of the house. Oh, shit. Nailed it. But we get to the stairwell, and it comes up and comes back. So the stairs go this way, there's a little area, and then it comes this way. And Khalid was there, and he jumped behind a banister. And I'm at this point now, because I had the front row seat to the coolest mission in modern history. I'm just watching cool guys, right? And they're going up the stairs, and he jumps back, and I'm a certain amount of guys back. And normally in an urban setting, if we're fighting up, I will pull guys out. I only want a certain amount of guys on there just to avoid unnecessary deaths if he starts dropping shells like grenades.
Now, I'll tell you from what he's saying right there. I mean, he's a team leader at the time. That's a team leader move. That's a veteran move to not get amped up, as I don't want to say a junior guy, but as a less experienced guy that just wants to crowd that stairwell and get to the fight. That's a bad place to be. Even though you want your guys to be pushing forward and in the fight, experience gave him that and gave him the wherewithal to say, nope, I want to make sure there's enough people up there to be in the fight, but not everyone has to be there to watch the fight because 6-7 guys back, you're not useful in the fight. So what he's saying right there is exactly that's a veteran move.
Right. And notice how exactly he phrases this from a statement analysis perspective. He says they're going up the stairs, not we're going up the stairs, indicating that he's not going up the stairs yet. And he gives you a little more information as he continues the story because he's about 8 men back. So he's not going up the stairs at that time, but some of the other team members are.
Something like that, but it was basically come here.
Again, so I'm going to get to the bottom of this one. It was one of those things that really just recently I've noticed that some stories he just says, come here. Matt Bissonnette just says, come here. But in other stories, Rob, in several accounts, also says he says it in 2 different languages. I don't know the truth on this. Hopefully by the time this thing airs, we'll have an update. I'll put out my feelers. But if that's true, again, the guy read the point man for this. They got the right guy at the front of this train in the mission because he is a badass. And if he learned come here in 2 different languages, and by the way, you're not assigned to be the point man inside the house. You're assigned to be the point man outside the house if you're walking to an objective. But once you get inside the house, it's a free-for-all. So the right guy for the job happens to be in the front of the line.
At the point.
And at the end of the day, I kind of don't care. Well, of course, I do care because the truth matters. And it would be a good indicator if that's not correct. But whether he just said his name or said his name and in 2 different languages, either way.
What do you think?
What an amazing story.
What do you think the 2 different languages thing is? Rob trying to build on the story with extra details that makes it more Hollywoody.
If he did, it would be the beginning of churching it up. But I'm not going to hang my hat on this. I could absolutely be wrong, and I'm hesitant to do that. Because Rob's going to come out and he's going to find a few things that I'm wrong on, and he's really going to try to attack those, and he's going to completely ignore, the much bigger points I have. So I just bring it up, not not hanging my hat on it. I'm genuinely interested.
2 different languages that he knew Khalid spoke, which I think is incredible. Because I would have thought he would pin and try to get shot on. And Khalid simply got confused. And he leaned over the thing and went, what?
No shit.
That is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Again, we can go back to, these aren't 2 separate stories yet. These are 2 very similar stories. The point man says Khalid. The details of that can vary, and that's fine by me. We haven't gone off into a different direction.
The basics of the story are corroborative.
Correct. So we're still on the same narrative. No issues here.
In combat. How tactically savvy are you to think of doing that? Like, well, he doesn't know. We might be Pakistanis here to move him. He doesn't know. I'll just call him out. And he did. So and he's armed, perfectly within his rules of engagement. We step around him. We go to the second deck, the last set of stairs. And I moved from this point from like the 8th guy to the 2nd guy, because everyone else went to the right, to the left, because you want to clear, obviously, the area before you move on. But now we're down to 2.
Let's play a math game real quick. He's in the 8th spot, and he moves up to the 2-man, basically saying that 6 men went to go clear level 2. Math right so far? He's 8 men. He's an 8-man back. 6 people ahead of him. He's 7 people ahead of him.
Right.
The point man stays, and which tactically is correct. He has the most history on that landing. He owns the landing. He owns the stairs. He should stay on those stairs. Checks out. So 6 people between him and the point man move on. You only got to Google it. 25. It can 24, 25, 26. I'll go with the middle number 25. Tier 1 SEAL Team 6 operators are on this mission. A couple will be snipers and a dog guy. A couple may not be in the house. So let's bring it down to as many as 5 or 6. You still have 20 operators in this house. You want 18, 20 operators to take down this objective as fast as you can. Now, this isn't hostage rescue, so they're probably not going to be going as fast as they can. I don't want to get into too much of the details of those tactics. But they have a lot of people on this mission, and that's not an opinion. That's a fact. You can go look that up. They say how many, roughly how many SEALs are on this mission. So the story of him going from 8 to 2, and that there's no one left to continue this train, that's not what Matt Bissonnette says. Matt Bissonnette says, I'm sure that the force got cut in half. Whoever was done clearing the first floor, guys started clearing the second floor, and now by the time it's time to go for the third floor, your first floor guys are going up.
Yeah, because you said it. You said a couple minutes ago, when you get in the house, it's a free-for-all. Everybody wants some, so there's going to be people finding work, right?
Absolutely. And everyone knows, and he said, she's been right so far, everyone knows the big guys on the third floor. So if you think guys are dragging feet on the first floor, and if guys are dragging feet on the second floor, they know. I mean, they're hoping, you still have to clear the second floor, and the second floor guys are hoping that the intel is wrong, but they know the third floor is the target. He says that. So I do not believe. Here's where we start, tactically, and from my tier 1 experience, the amount of people that take down this a target like this, a high value target environment, that if I believe 2 people would be moving up to the third floor and no more because they were spread too thin. No, absolutely not. In fact, again, Matt Bissonnette, who was there, doesn't tell that story either. But it has to be this way. Because it sets him up. It sets him up later. So it has to be this way. Let's continue.
And we're pointing at the last set of stairs. And above it, there was a curtain. It looked kind of like a shower curtain, but it was like a green olive drab type thing. And we could see there's sort of backlit, there's people moving.
Hopefully everyone is still with me and is excited to get to this part. I said earlier about when we read the one article that said that Red from the stairwell took a shot into the room where bin Laden was standing in the doorway. If this curtain was here at the top of the stairs, which is where he places this curtain, how could the one man see Bin Laden standing in his doorway.
Right.
So right now we have the stories are starting to
Conflict.
and they're starting to go off in very different directions.
Right.
So I don't believe that this curtain is here. Again, this curtain has to be here though, because if this curtain is here, then Red could not take the shot into the doorway. So this curtain comes out of nowhere. I also find it to be very odd. I've been in many, many, many houses overseas. You don't find a curtain blocking the stairwell. They do weird things. I'm not saying it'll never happen. But a curtain blocking a room, see it all the time. A curtain blocking a stairwell,
Unusual.
seems like a good way to fall down the stairs.
Oh, that's a good point.
So again, this narrative of and he also says it's backlit and they can see people moving back and forth. Backlit from what? It's a zero lume night, and everybody agrees, including you, Rob, that there are no lights. It is dark, so there's nothing to backlight you. And if there's no backlit, you go on a zero lume night, and the house is dark. How are you seeing through this curtain in the darkest of nights to see there are people behind there? I'm not hanging my hat on this, but now we're definitely getting to a point where I have serious questions about your version of the story when I had zero questions about the last operator that was there.
Right.
And we assumed those were the suicide bombers, but Bin Laden's in there. And the guy in front of me took a shot before we got there, and they're moving around.
Wait. Why does no one question him on this? Well, I'll tell you why. Because they don't have the tier 1 experience. Like we said, only someone from that community sometimes can hear something that says, that's not right. So a tier 1 SEAL Team 6 veteran operator who's been a killer all night just took a shot. And according to you, Rob, he just took a blind shot into a curtain? You didn't say anyone opened the curtain. You just saw you could kind of see some people. That's not how it works. When tier 1 operators to take a shot inside a house on target, people die. That's what happens. Not only does there's two things that happen actually. One, people die. Two, you have these sharks moving around target that are hungry and they're looking for work. And when it's a suppressed shot, it's not a subsonic, no one can hear it shot. So when the boys hear this shot, they'll hear it on the same floor. Oh, you're going to get the attention of other assaulters and you're going to get help real quick. You will no longer be 2 men. If you were 2 men at this point,
you're not 2 men.
You're not 2 men about 2 seconds later. You got a group of people looking to help you out.
Just to keep people on track, they're at the stairwell. Red just shot. Now, Rob's version is Red shot into nothingness, into a curtain. The real version,
he doesn't even say what he shot into. He just says, because he doesn't want to say where he shot.
But this would be where, again, Rob's story. I don't believe it to be true, but in order to dissect it, we have to go with Rob's story for this. According to Rob's story, this is where it was him and Red, but when someone shoots, he's going to have about 6 people behind him in less than...
The boys are coming. The boys that aren't doing,
and he wouldn't
valuable work are coming.
He wouldn't have taken that curtain room, or whatever he wants to call it, by himself.
No. And again, I question this whole curtain. The curtain is only... It's very important right now to, again, remind us of where we're at. We're at the bottom of these these stairs. When you get to the top of the stairs, it's just a long, straight hallway from one end of the house to the other. You're at one end of the house, you can see all the way through to the other end of the house. On all 4 corners of the house are bedrooms. So that means when you come into the hallway, immediately to your left is a bedroom, immediately to your right is a bedroom. Go down the hallway a lot more, and again, opposing doors. One door to the left will lead off to the other room in the far corner, and the one to the right. So 4 corners, 4 rooms, very simple layout, hallway completely down the middle. Now, to orient you, the Bin Laden room is the first room on the right, which means from the bottom of the stairs, let's take the magical cloth curtain out of it. You would have been able to see into the bedroom to the right a little bit, not much. If someone was at the doorway, you would absolutely be able to see that. Which is what everyone says happens. And in Rob's version, he now emplaces this curtain that doesn't allow Red to be the shooter. Yet I find it odd he gives him enough truth to say, oh, and Rob shot. Rob, that Red, the point man, shot. But no one questions him. Who did he shoot at? Who do you think he hit? Moving on.
And I'm the 2-man, and my job as a 2-man is to hold him and wait. His job is to simply go forward.
Correct.
Drop security, and I got you.
Did you see anything in there?
Effective communication with
No, not really. No, as far as verbal or nonverbal, he's okay here. Again, but going to the tactical aspects of what Brent is bringing up, yeah, there's definitely, it seemed like an issue there because Brent had mentioned earlier that the point man would follow his shot, which doesn't appear to be the case here.
Right. There's another good point. Hey, I'm supposed to be the tactics guy. What are you doing?
No, well, so just going off of what you said.
So this guy, there ends up being so many points.
Yeah,
we're going to get done with this episode. I'm going to be like, why? I should have said that. I should have said that. I should have said that. I'm glad you brought that up. He also isn't following his shot, which is the tactic.
Because Rob's just said that he has fired. He has shot. Which,
right,
according to what Brent's saying, and I'm not the tactical guy, you would follow your shot, which does seem to make sense. You would follow your shot.
And I'm not the only one said it. Obviously, what is it? The Intercept with all their interviews, all those Navy SEALs said the same thing. Corroborated my version of tactics, which is you follow your shot.
Right.
They said it. I'm agreeing. I say that's what happens, but magically enough, that's not what happens.
It's your time to go. I will squeeze you. It's on. I'm just telling you through effective communication we have enough guys. But we don't have enough guys. We're out of guys. It's 2 of us. And I want 4 more. I'll take 2. But he starts saying, we got to go. Come on, we got to go. He doesn't know it's me. He knows it's one of his guys. And what he's saying...
Let's stop there for a second. I don't need a squeeze, just so you know, as a one man to follow my shots. Once he says that he has that hand on his shoulder, I'm going because I know you're there. Right. I know that I'm allowed and should and need to follow my shots. I'm not waiting on your squeeze. I only need 1 more and I'm going. So it's if he took that shot, which Rob admits that he did, and then it was Bin Laden, which every other story says it is, he would have followed the shots into the room that we're talking about.
Right.
All right. Let's continue. See what he says.
Those are basically suggesting those are the suicide bombers, but if we go right now, we can beat them. And I remember taking a deep breath, and it was by no means bravery on my part. It was more of okay, we're going to blow up now, and I'm tired of thinking about it. Let's fucking get over it.
So this is a very serious, somber moment in his part of the raid. He knows it's the 3rd floor. He has gone on to say, all the intel has been very accurate, which is what you would expect with guys at this level, as professional as they are. Some of the funniest guys I ever worked with were the most serious guys on target until it was cleared. Again, not something I want to hang my hat on, but something just interesting. Anytime there's a variance in the story, we got to talk about it. So was it a serious moment in the hallway or was it not? What else do you have to say about it, Rob?
And with me, this means we're going. So I got him like this, and we're out of guys. And I want 2 more. Because he's looking at, he already taken a shot.
He'd already taken a shot. Says it again.
Yeah.
The interviewer never asks him Who did he shoot? But he doesn't know to.
Oh,
He
yeah,
do- again, he doesn't
right.
know that. No one questions him when there's only one other dead person on this target, and it's Osama bin Laden, and he admits to people shooting on the 3rd floor. Always interesting to me. But again, these guys don't know, what I know.
Before I got there. And,
You're a man?
yeah, my guy took a shot upstairs. Yeah. And I don't, that's for him to tell the story. Complete balance. He sees people moving.
That's for him to tell his story. This would be a 3-hour podcast, which I'm sure some of you guys would love if it was. You can do the same research I did. There are several times, and we'll show another one where he goes. I believe we'll show another one. I think it's in there. I don't know. That's his story. That's his story to tell. I don't know. He'll say it this way. He'll probably tell that story different, but that's his story to tell. I have never been confronted about a story of mine on Target and not just said that's how it happened. I've never left that wiggle room to go, well, but he may have a different story. It almost seems as if he doesn't think Red's ever going to talk, but just in case Red talks,
Here's a disclaimer.
I have the disclaimer. Right. Again, he's so confident on everything, but when it comes to Red, and in this moment, in several interviews, he gets very wish-washy and leaves the door open for controversy and says, well, that's his story. He may have a different story. Why would he have a different story, Rob? You're right behind him. You're the 2-man, according to you. You guys should have the same story. We're not talking about you two splitting off and going into different directions. Right now, you two are looking at the same thing at the same time in a small stairwell, which is only one way to look. There should be no second version of this story. Again, the truth is it's hard to keep together when you veer off of it.
I want more guys, and he starts pimping me now. He doesn't know it's me. He knows it's one of his guys. He's like, we gotta go. Come on, we gotta go. Because what he's saying is, that's the suicide bombers. Well, we can beat them, but we have to go now. And this is when I said the story, but I'm pretty sure
It's his side of the story.
hey man, these bitches is getting truculent. I enjoy humor. This is my last joke of my life. I whip before I squeeze and I whisper in his ear. I don't think that word means what you think it means. And I scoop.
Again, not going to hang my hat on this, but he talks about how quiet everyone is moving. How you have a bunch of lethal killers in this house, and right after this guy takes a shot and should be following a shot is what he should be doing. Instead, he's making jokes and saying things like, these bitches are getting truculent.
Well, if it would be the most serious moment of your life, the one time where you were the most serious, right? Am I wrong?
It would seem to me that it would be. Now, maybe Red's just a funny dude, and I don't know him. I'm not going to hang my hat on this and say there's no way he made a joke. Maybe he did. But I can tell you, it's very interesting. Just the other interview I showed you is a very serious suicide bombers are going. Let's go. All right, we're about to die. Let's get it over with. And now they're smoking and joking in the stairwell. Which one is it? It can't be both.
Right. When you're in the moment of something like this, obviously a highly traumatic type of an event, you're in that moment, and you probably aren't. You're going to be laser focused, and to make comments like that, which are really going to be not relevant at all, it would be very, very highly unusual. It would just be really, really highly unusual.
Now, I would give it to him. I can see him trying to wiggle out of this and being like, well, I wouldn't have said that I'll make it up, on 60 Minutes, because it's a very serious, I can't say those type of words on a very serious show. The other show he's talking about is the Shawn Ryan podcast. It's just another team guy he's talking to. He can say whatever he wants. It's the perfect environment to include that funny story, which, by the way, time-wise is just within a year. These are both recent stories.
Okay.
If I go back to his book, he actually mentions this in his book, but in his book he says, again, it seems small, but it's hard to keep up. When it's not the truth, it's hard to keep up with. In his book, he says something about, these bitches are being truculent. And he says, and I laughed to myself because I always thought that word was funny, but makes no mention of him talking back to him and saying, I don't think that word means what you think it means, and starts laughing about it. I call this the beginning of and I don't want to be unprofessional about it, of Showtime Rob. I don't know a better way to explain it. He's starting to kind of, humanize this story to make it, because the truth
Add
is
more details.
The truth is boring. Listen to Matt Bissonnette's story. It's not
sexy.
You're not going to laugh at it. There's nothing on there about 2 languages. They're going to be like, that's amazing. Again, maybe that happened, maybe that didn't. That's not what we're here to talk about. But he starts with this, this very, it's almost like he's getting ready to go on the road with this. In fact, he's been on the road for a long time with it and making millions of dollars. So there's another. We're gonna go back to the Shawn Ryan show. But I'm just, like I said, we're just gonna veer off another. There are several episodes I can show you that are different. But again, I only need to show you that that he tells a different story once to prove my point.
So you can squeeze it, he goes up, he moves the curtain, and there are 3 people standing there. He didn't have even enough time. He just jumped on.
So he's talking about, again, me orient you. There's this curtain at the top of the stairwell. The one man opens it. He sees, how many women does he say are at the top of that stairwell? You remember?
Well, I think Matt says 2, right?
Well, Matt, that's a good question. Matt puts them inside the room because he followed his shot into the room, and those girls were inside the room. Again, this is where we're not talking about 2 different versions of the story. We're talking about 2 very different stories. And this version of the story, again, there's a curtain that you can magically not see forward in. He's setting it up. So now when he pulls the curtain, he has to attack these 2 women in the hallway, and he's keeping Red in the hallway. So he's setting himself up for the big one-on-one in the room. Okay? So sometimes he says it depends on the interview. Sometimes he says it's 2 women. Sometimes he says it's 3 women. Again, the truth is, when it's the truth, you know how many it is. These little details are always going to trip you up. He says 3 women in this, and he keeps Red in the hallway. Now, he's going to go on to describe Red as a hero deserving the Medal of Honor. Says these girls that he tackled, he thought were suicide vests, and put his life on the line to save his. Well, let's talk about what we know of Red real quick. Red's a savage killer that's not afraid to shoot people in the face. And if he thought they were a suicide bomber, females or not, what do you think Red was going to do?
Well, they would be a threat.
They would be a threat, and he'd have shot them both in the face, because Red's going home to his family. So he didn't. I don't believe he thought that they were suicide vests. By the way, I don't believe he thought they were in the hallway. I mean, he wasn't in the hallway when this happened. But again, let's keep with Rob's story. Now he's in the hallway, and he makes him out to be a Medal of Honor winner for tackling 2 girls. I believe he does this because at the end of the day, he feels bad for stealing Red's valor, who killed 2 of the biggest people on target, and gets only credit for one of them, and does not get the credit for throwing the game-winning touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. Let's listen to see how much he churches up the story and praises Red for just tackling 2 girls.
How he doesn't have a Medal of Honor is beyond me. He jumped on the grenade so the guy behind him could get shot. Damn. So and simply because he went this way, I turned this way. And standing 3 feet in front of me is Osama bin Laden, and he's got his hands on them all, his wife's shoulders. And I don't know what he's doing. He's not surrendering.
We got to stop it there. There's a lot there. It comes at you fast. Now he has conveniently set himself up to be the only man in this room. Mind you, 20-plus Navy SEALs on target, and he finds himself a way to be the absolute only man in the one room that Osama bin Laden is in. So Let's go back to Matt Bissonnette's story. We talked about it. The one man shoots. He follows his shot. He goes in. He clears his immediate threat and takes these girls for a ride because he clears his corner. That's what Tier 1 operators do. I've already said it. I've said it. I can say it with conviction because I've done it 100,000 times in training. I've done it thousands of times on target. It's what happens. It is instinct. Nothing stops you from it at this point. It's why you as a team leader, Rob, are on this mission because they know you have those reps. So what happens when Rob O'Neill goes into this room that because of this curtain, he doesn't know who's in there. He decides, there's someone in his way. What does he do? What does he do? Does he clear his corner and push him and ride him the way he does, that Red does with the two girls?
Right.
It seems to me if there's someone in front of Rob O'Neill,
According to Rob, he just stopped.
he just stops and admires the guy. And not only does he just stop in his track and admire the guy and not do his job of clearing his corner, right, and close withing and destroying, you got two options. Kill this guy immediately because you think he's a threat, or you take him for a ride to your corner. Close with and put hands on the enemy. It's what he's been trained to do his whole life. But now he stops and he starts admiring. He goes in this weird story. He goes, I see how tall he is. I can see his hands are on his wife sitting there. I can see his nose. He goes on to say, I can see his face. I can see how skinny he is. He goes on to say, I can see the gray in his beard. Wait a minute. Is there gray in his beard? That's the problem with all these all these pesky facts. Matt Bissonnette, for absolutely no reason, has already said he had a jet black beard. But I say no reason.
He has no reason to.
He has no reason to add that in, but it makes logical sense of why the most wanted man in America would want to change his beard color from gray to black. But Rob forgets this. And he's saying under night vision that he can see all these details. Again, it's a zero loom night. He's within 3 feet of this guy. There are other interviews. He says I'm with a foot and a half. Your nods don't automatically focus. You set your nods at a standard depth that you're comfortable with. Usually it's 10, 12, 15 feet, whatever it is. When you see something 3 feet away, it's out of focus. They don't autofocus. And by the way, we'll split it in half. 2.5 feet. He said 1.5 here. He says 3 feet here. He's under 3 feet. He makes that turn. Well, it's like he's going to say, well, I had panos on. I can see more left and right. I can see more. But it's the up and down that I have an issue with. When we show you what it looks like through nods, you can't even tell he has his hands on his wife. Can't even tell. You can't tell the color of his beard. You can't tell his nose. You can't tell any of that unless two things. One, you stop and admire for a long time. But unfortunately, Rob tells us how long it takes him to process this. He says it over and over again. He says it takes about 1 second. There's actually there's one thing I have to go back and address that I actually missed. Hopefully it's the only thing I get out of sequence about. Rob O'Neill actually did an article for the Esquire called The Shooter. It was before he came out publicly. So it had been about 10 years old. In his own article called The Shooter, again with Esquire, it said they stepped over and passed Khalid, who's dead on the stairs. The point man at this time saw a guy on the 3rd floor peeking around a curtain in front of the hallway. Bin Laden was the only adult male left to find. The point man took a shot, maybe 2, and the man upstairs disappeared back into the room. He said, Rob O'Neill says, I didn't see that because I was looking back. However, he admits that we always talk about, he took a shot. Who did he take that shot at? This is the only time that I found that Rob O'Neill himself actually admits that the point man, Red, sees Osama bin Laden at the top of the stairs and takes shots. Now, according to Rob, he conveniently misses, which is hard to believe a SEAL Team 6 operator doing at that close range, especially.
Right.
And he quits mentioning this detail later on. This is early. It's not a convenient truth for him to continue to say, yes, the point man actually saw him first and actually took fire and actually shot at him first. You can see in the Shawn Ryan interview, he makes no mention of the point man seeing bin Laden in the room and taking 1 to 2 shots. He just quickly says, yeah, he took a shot and then he got anxious. I'm surprised, honestly, he even continues to give Red any sort of credit for taking a shot. But since no one's ever questioned him about Red's shot, kinda, we'll see. You know, why leave it out? And he continues to leave that piece of evidence in there to say, well, in case it ever comes out, well, I said Red shot. So he keeps the shot in there, but he definitely pulls out the part in the story that he shoots at bin Laden that he himself admits to in the Esquire article.
Right.
He himself admits it. Unfortunately, the things that go on the internet stay there. And I'm not even sure we found them all. We found a lot. Every time I look, I find more stuff.
Still waiting to find a sex tape.
Here we go, continuing with his own words.
She's maneuvering somehow. His hands are on her, and I remember thinking, he's taller than I thought. He's skinnier than I thought.
So you knew it was him as soon
Right,
as you turned the corner?
Yep. His beard is gray. He's not surrendering. He's got to have a suicide belt. So I shot him twice when he was standing up.
Again, I can't help but be in awe of everything Rob O'Neill sees in 1 second. He immediately PIDs him. He sees that his beard's gray and not black. He sees his nose. He sees his face. He sees his height. He sees his hands on his wife's shoulders. Right. He sees it all in 1 second. And you cannot come back to me and be like, well, he's saying that kind of in reference because as he's looking back, he's saying, yeah, I process all that in 1 second. And now I'm just kind of, slowing that's those things happened. But in hindsight, I'm realizing all that happened. Nope. He also says in this article, or he also says in this video, that he stands up and I took the shot. Shot him twice in the head. Rob, he was already standing. How did you know he was 6'4"? You already mentioned how tall he was. He wasn't crouched down because then you couldn't mention how tall he was. If he's using his wife as a shield, he probably would have been crouched behind her. But again, I'm just pointing out some things that don't make sense. But what definitely doesn't make sense is you can't have it both ways. You can't be in awe of how tall he is and then say him standing up is the movement that triggered you to say, oh, he's moving, I'm shooting him twice in the face. It's always these little details that are going to trip you up. I don't want to speak for, do you agree with that? Are these little details as important as I'm making them out to be?
Right. Well, in my book, one of the things that I talk about is, can you bake the cake based on the ingredients that you're being given? And the ingredients that Rob is giving here simply don't really add up. They don't make sense. You can't really bake the cake based on the ingredients that Rob is providing in this part of his retelling of the event.
There's something else unfortunate for Rob that he continues to talk about in that Esquire article, The Shooter. He goes on to say, not only does he say the point man saw and shot at Osama bin Laden, he says this. I'm just looking at him from right here. And then it says in parentheses, he moves his hand out in front about 10 inches. So now it's 10 inches away. Sometimes it's a foot and a half. Sometimes it's 3 feet. He's never consistent about how far away bin Laden is. Again, just making a point. This is a much bigger point. He's got a gun on a shelf right there. The short AK he's famous for, and he's moving forward. I don't know if he's got a vest on. She's being pushed, a martyr for them both. He's got a gun within reach. He's a threat. I need to go ahead. I need to get a headshot so he won't have a chance to clack himself off. So 10 years ago when he tells this story, he talks about, now we're adding man, how much can this guy do in a second? Not only can he see every facial feature, height, and hand position and PID and blurry nods, he can also see a gun within hand's reach, which means you have to if he's reaching for it or looking for it, you have to stop, and you also have to refocus what he's looking at, identify that, and then come back for the shot. This isn't happening in a second.
Yeah.
These are details, again, that
that don't add up.
The biggest thing too is every kind of grunt person, you know, infantry guy, SWAT guy, guys that have any experience with night vision, is the kicker for me was it's gonna be blurry. Like all these things that Brent's bringing to the table are all great, but the kicker for me is there's no way you can look at somebody for 1 second and go, that's him. Like that big of a mission where it means that much. It's just, even if they weren't blurry, I would imagine before you did that, you'd have to white light, flip up, and look down. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, inconveniently for Rob, that's exactly what Matt Bissonnette says. It says when someone's shot in the head 3 times, it takes a little bit to. Well, I mean, you're talking about like during the shot, but even after the shot, I may not want to hang my hat on one exact thing that I'm saying, but how many points do I have to make that don't add up? How many other people do I have to bring in this conversation that do not back up Rob's? And you can't say that's his version of the story, because we're not talking about 2 versions of the same story again. We're talking about 2 wildly different stories. By the way, he stops mentioning the gun. One of the articles that's really easy to find that I read is they talk about Osama bin Laden's guns in the room, and that they were very hard to find, and so it does not coincide with him easily seeing him reaching for a gun. They had to look for the guns, and they were unloaded. So that doesn't bode well for his story, which is why I believe he drops that story off. Although it's a much better reason of why to shoot someone is because he's going for his gun, but unfortunately that the specifics of his gun in the room become public, and he conveniently drops that from his story. Let's go back here and finish it out.
I shot him down the floor, and then I moved them all out of the way. So I could hear him on taking his last breath. When I shot him, he fell to the foot of the bed. Where'd you shoot him? I shot him in the face 3 times. I moved them all, and I just...
he didn't like that detail. I'm telling you, I look at some of these videos. Rob does not like giving those gritty details because he says it and he goes right back to his story.
That's right. He stays in a circle. We call that staying in your circle in SEER school, which is he's SEER trained. He knows exactly what that means. He's been trained to do that. He stays in a circle. Here's something else. He doesn't say it in that. I'll give you the we'll reference it in the podcast where he says it. And he says, I shoot right over Amal's right shoulder. Well, here's the problem. Osama bin Laden is 6'4" and is a foot taller than Amal. And Amal, if what he's saying is true, he has his hands on his wife's shoulders. When you have your hands on someone's shoulders, it means you're directly behind them. You know, this isn't like a high school photo where you, like awkward 90s Owen Mills where you take it. If he's using her as a shield, he's got her right in front of him for protection. Well, the problem with that is if he's 6'4", if you'd have shot over her right shoulder, you'd have hit him in a skinny little arm. You would not have hit him in the head if you shot over her right shoulder. He's standing directly behind her. He's head and shoulders taller than her. You would have to shoot over her head to hit him in the head. Again, it's these pesky little details that are just going to continue to haunt Rob. There's no way he ever thought a Tier 1 operator was going to come around and nitpick his story for truth. He's not prepared for this. Unfortunately for him, it's happening. And he's said too much too many times, and it hasn't been consistent enough, and it hasn't been that hard to pick him apart. You just have to pay attention. See where he goes from here.
His 2-year-old son is now standing there, and this is the...
By the way, hate to stop it again, but we said it before. It's worth saying twice. He even says in his book, It's common knowledge. It's said several times. Amal is shot in the leg. Matt Bissonnette says every woman on target is hostile. I can go back. Just going to do it. I'm going to go back to Amal's words herself. When the Navy team entered the room, she said the Navy team. She didn't say when one Navy guy entered the room. By the way, she knew it was. She can say Navy. This article was taken years later. The President of the United States said the SEALs did it the night of the mission. I'm sure she knows it was the Navy SEALs. When the Navy team entered the room, she says a whole team entered the room. Funny enough, that's what Matthew Cole says, and that's what Matt Bissonnette says. She tried to rush them. Again, that goes exactly what Matt Bissonnette says. He says every female was uppity that night, but she was shot in the leg and passed out. Do you think if she was shot in the leg, she'd just be sitting there waiting to be a human shield for Osama bin Laden? It's just something else. Nothing about the story lines up. And if people, I said earlier, and people who don't believe it, there's nothing we can say that's really going to change their mind. That's what they believe anyway. I actually don't believe that. If those people have listened to this podcast at this point, it's overwhelming. There's no rebutting. You'll be able to rebut maybe this and maybe that. As a whole, it's just irrefutable. And we're not even done. We're almost done.
This kid has got nothing to do with this. I'm a father. And I picked him up, and I moved him to the back of the bed. And she'd been shot. And I turned around.
So he does say it. She's been shot. Who shot her, Rob? You're the only person in the room.
I had not even put that one together.
Who shot her, Rob?
Well, what really? I mean, if you look at all the stories that you've sort of taken here, and various stories, including Amal's and Matt's and Rob's,
he's cross-pollinating,
and you sort of crop them together. It certainly makes sense that the point man follows his shot. He fires at Osama, who is at the doorway.
Right.
Osama falls back into the room, as Matt said.
Right.
Amal, as she said, then rushes the door, which kind of does make sense. Like she's kind of going to be hysterical.
Right.
The point man is going to be following a shot, seeing her rushing towards him. What's he going to do? He's going to fire at her, I would assume.
And this is just me piecing it together again from all the stories
Right.
I've heard. I believe that's close. I believe that's very close. I don't believe Red shot her on the leg. I believe he was. These boys are quick. Tier 1 operators are quick. When he decided to take that shot in the doorway, Osama falls back. He's moving. He's gone. He's in that room. He takes those two girls for a ride, to his corner, and whoever the unlucky operator that she decided to, unlucky for her, that she decided to rush, shot her in the leg. But I can tell you who it wasn't. He better not come out and say, well, Red probably shot her. I said Red shot, and Red probably shot her in the leg. You're telling me, again, it goes back to a tier, like it doesn't pass the tier 1 sniff test by a long shot. You're telling me we don't train guys to shoot people in the leg. I don't know why she was shot in the leg, but where she was, he sees someone at a distance. We shoot people in the chest and the face. Red's been doing it all night. Now, all of a sudden, if he tries to say that Red did it, if he tries to say Red did it, now he goes from a guy who in a split second can shoot a guy in the stairs between the eyes, and then he can shoot Osama bin Laden in a second in the chest, and then he just loses the ability to shoot, and he shoots a chick in the leg.
Could Rob argue that that's maybe the shot, that Red shot that went through the curtain and hit her in the leg? Like that,
the problem with that becomes, like Brent said, then how is she standing up as a shield if she's shot in the leg?
Boom. Yeah, it's just.
I mean, that
caught in a
totally
web of
doesn't add up.
lies.
Then
That is the problem with lies. You will be caught eventually, and he's caught.
And standing 3 feet in front of you is Osama bin Laden, and he's got his hands on them all, his wife's shoulders. And I don't know what he's doing. He's not surrendering. He's maneuvering some video
Was him was
right,
him turn the corner?
Yep. His beard is gray. He's not surrendering. He's got to have a suicide belt. So I shot him twice when he was standing up. I shot him again on the floor, and then I moved a wall out of the way. So I can hear him on taking his last breath. When I shot him, he fell to the foot of the bed.
Where'd you shoot him?
I shot him in the
Let's stop there for a second real quick. He says he shoots him in the face twice, once on the ground for a third time, and then he watches him, goes back to a little bit of Showtime Rob, watches him take his last breath. If you watch his other podcast, which we already alluded to, and that is the interview with Joe Budden, he goes into great detail talking about why it's so important to shoot suicide bombers in the face. Is because you get this, immediate kill. He talks about it himself. We shoot people in the face because it gives you what we call a central nervous system shutdown. It immediately ceases everything. The best thing you'll get is maybe an involuntary twitch,
Right.
which is kind of what you got from Osama bin Laden that they talk about because he's shot in the chest. You get that from that. Generally speaking, you shoot someone, especially 3 times with these types of special rounds these guys use. I haven't seen anything but just people drop and not another movement. And so now you're telling me, now he didn't just like crumple to the ground. He's in this position, and you're just staring and looking over his body, and he takes this movie-like last breath. It's almost like cut scene.
What struck me
it's the
about
end.
what struck me about it is this is one crowded bedroom.
Well, it's not right now. Right now, he's just got himself in there.
Well, you got 3 people that the point person took out.
Well,
The point
that's
man
not,
took
that's well.
out. He said 3 people.
That's not in the bedroom.
In
though, right?
his story, he conveniently puts.
Well, where were
puts-
they?
he-
They were somewhere
He puts the point man into the hallway.
with 3 people.
He's the only one that puts the point man in the hallway.
And then there's 2 people in the bedroom and apparently a 2-year-old
Correct. Yep.
as well. And then again, it would be really, really unclear as to when them all got shot. If he moved her then out of the way, when did she get shot?
That's the magical bullet that flew up the stairs and shot them all is going to be tough to answer. And these only 2 answers is that Red is a horrible shot and shot her, or there are other people in that room that shot her. That's an inconvenient truth. My bigger problem with this is that he's standing over a guy that he just shot and he's watching him take this mythical last breath. But what he's not doing is, if you're the only man left in this room, is continuing to collapse your sector and clear this room. Again, that's something only a tier 1 guy.
Right,
You're not
right.
just tier. That's a basic CQB principle, but it's something that jumps out at a tier 1 guy who knows the basics, that knows that these basics have been drilled into you and you don't stop doing them.
Well, and that's what Matt said when Matt was relating this same part of the incident, which is man is down. Not sure who he is, but man is down. We're going to go ahead and we put some more rounds down
Right.
On him, and then continue to clear the room.
Right.
And that sort of rings more true, and it rings to what the training is, right?
Correct.
And again, I can't speak to that,
Right, but I
you
can
certainly
validate it for
can.
you. No, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Let's. But the big ending isn't over yet.
I moved them all, and his 2-year-old son is now standing there. And this is the humanity of everything.
You have your humanity moment.
I'm a father, and I picked him up, and I moved him to the back of the bed, and she'd been shot, and I turn around, and
Doesn't explain how. You're the only man in this room. Anyway, I can't get over that.
I kind of froze. Other Navy SEALs are not coming in. A lot of guys are in there, and one of my guys came up to me, and he said, "Are you good?" And I said, "No. What are we supposed to do now?"
I have to stop right there. A lot of things I said, where I say like this jumps out at me, like this isn't true. This jumps out at me. This isn't true. The biggest thing that I will probably have a hard time relaying to people who weren't in this community and don't understand. Team leaders are gods in a tier 1 team unit. Okay, he says self-proclaimed 400 missions. Don't doubt it. I said before, this man is an American hero. He's a war hero. He's done things. He has seen things. He has done great things over and over and over and over and over for this country. Not only did it in war, he did it in training over and over and over and over, so he could do it in war.
Right.
He's on this mission, as he says, because he was picked to be on this mission. He was good enough to be on this mission. And on the biggest stage, you forget what to do. He has this, what I call tactical amnesia. And by the way, the mission magically stops apparently right now in this story, because that's kind of how this, I don't know if he's writing his own movie and this is how he wants it to end and thinks this is a good ending. I've already explained that this is one of 4 rooms and upstairs, one of 4 rooms. Now, between him, we'll jump back and forth between his story and reality. He says by the time he gets in that room, takes him about a second to shoot Osama bin Laden in the face, regardless of everything else he says he sees and does. Okay? And then he moves a kid over to the bed, moves them all out of the way, moves a kid to the bed. All this can happen in just a matter of seconds. And now Navy SEALs are flooding into the room, and they're not continuing to clear, which means in a matter of seconds, he's gone from alone to the whole 3rd floor cleared. Do you follow the point I'm trying to make?
Right.
So,
well, it certainly doesn't add up.
Let's take this story with Matt Bissonnette, and the other story that I've heard personally from them is that it's a whole group of guys going to the 3rd floor. Well, then yes, each room will kind of be taken down within a matter of seconds of each other.
Right.
But again, you can't have it both ways. You can't be by yourself and then the mission be basically over, right? You can't have it that way. It's just not the truth. So you're either by yourself or you have a large group of people in there with you. Again, it just goes back to it doesn't make tactical sense. Besides that, he forgets his job. He shoots a guy in the face 3 times, moves a kid, and then he's overwhelmed. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know that every mission in his life, when the mission is over, that you go to SSE. Do you find that to be odd that he just forgets his job? And he says this. He says, "My man, one of my men come up to me." So he's proving ownership. He's proving that I'm in a person above him in ownership, if you will. I'm a team leader, superior to this guy, because that's why he doesn't address him as and one of the guys on the mission, another guy. One of my men come up to me and says, "Are you okay?" I have never shot a guy on target, and had one of my lower IC men come up to me and be like,
"You good, Brent?
You just killed a terrorist. Are you okay, Brent?" It's what we're there to do. It's what he's done a lot. I believe Rob's killed a lot of people, and I believe he's been proud of probably every kill as he should have. But now he doesn't know what to do, and it doesn't make, when you hear it and you hear it as a story, you don't think anything of it. When you hear this story as a tier 1 operator, absolutely not. And now that I have you guys thinking in this way, does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it doesn't make sense. It's great to add to drama, but I think it's way too early to be certain that the person that you just shot is really Osama. I know that may have been the intel, but intel is one thing, but you don't really know that is Osama bin Laden. At that point, in that moment, right, in that second, if you will, you may in hindsight, but in that moment, you're not going to know that for sure, for certain.
Which is, again, what Matt Bissonnette said, that when you don't,
right,
you don't know.
You don't know. And you continue to do the job, which is exactly what
right,
Matt said.
Right. And Rob O'Neill, I guarantee you, knows the job to be done. So I do not buy this part of the story. Let's see what else he says.
And he said, now we find the computers. We do this every night, hundreds of times. And I said, yeah, you're right. I'm like, holy shit. And he said to me, yeah, you just killed Osama bin Laden. Your life should change. Get the fucking work.
Again, he's one of your guys, and he just told you as a team leader to get the fucking work? No, sir. I've never told a Delta Force team leader to get the fucking work. No, absolutely not. That's not how. It's not how it works. Okay, he doesn't get tactical amnesia. But that's not even the bigger. That's something that jumps out at me as a tier 1 guy. I don't think anyone else will realize what a big deal that is. The fact that this guy, blacked out room, blacked out night, zero loom night, no lights on. All this, I've already proved, all this has happened in a matter of seconds. If we go along with Rob's story, you just shot him in the face 3 times, and he's not laying out flat so you could see he's 6'4". He's crumpled with his face canoed, and you're telling me this guy walks into the room, sees a random person crumpled over with his face absolutely split open, and says, "Your life's about to change. You just killed Osama bin Laden." You buying that?
No, sir.
What do you got? You want to buy that?
No. I mean, I just from the get-go, I don't see how anybody could be within the first 30 minutes know for sure that that's Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, that's an awfully big thing to just put out there if you're not certain. And I think, again, you want to be certain, especially in this situation. So I think it's way too early. Again, and I'm not a tactical guy, I'm not a SWAT guy or anything like that, but I just think that just in a common sense framework here, I think that it's way too early to be making a positive ID or a positive call on something like that. Certainly in this situation, it's way
And
way
again,
too early.
from being on missions and doing this job, it won't take 30 minutes, but it's gonna take a few minutes. It's gonna take some water on the face, which they talk about doing. It's gonna take people putting his face back together. It's gonna take people, because they probably maybe they don't have a measurement on him. They're gonna lay him out to see how tall he is. All of this is going to happen before. Now the team is gonna say we got him, like way before they give that official, which may take minutes and minutes and minutes.
Absolutely.
But no how, no way does it happen the way Rob says it is. A guy just walks in, sees a guy on the floor, magically identifies him with 3 holes in his head, crumpled over, and then gives him a congratulatory, "Your life's about to change. You just killed Osama bin Laden." It's funny because
It's good for a movie.
it's a great movie.
Great
ending.
for a movie.
Unfortunately, Rob doesn't even believe that story because in 2015, he's probably hoping I didn't find this. He's talking to Lipscomb University in 2015 before I guess he polishes up his story, and he says this.
You might have to paraphrase that one because the audio kind of stuff.
Yeah, that audio is really low, but we will leave the link to this. Again, he forgets his job, which is amazing to me. But what he says in here is the guy goes, "Well, what do we do now?" He goes, "Well, we go find the computers like we always do." He's in his circle, but then he gets out of his circle a little bit, and he tells the person, "Hey, did you see what I just did?" That person doesn't tell him, "Hey, your life's about to change. You just shot Osama bin Laden." In this story, you tell him. You had to tell him, "Hey, did you see what I just did?" We're not talking about 2 small versions. Those are 2 wildly different versions.
Yeah.
If someone telling the truth would never tell that story,
Right.
that ending, because it's not how it happened. Either someone talked to you or they didn't. Either someone thinks your life's about to change because you shot Osama bin Laden. That's not something you forget. But in 2015, when he's actually the closest to the actual mission
incident,
happened,
right.
to the incident, he forgets what the guy says. Or we're having the same reoccurring problem that the truth is really is when if you don't tell the truth, it's really hard to remember all the details.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
That's what we continue to find.
And it's so, and these are, again, you said it. These are such minute details, but they're key. And that right there, just that little story, there's 2 stories. He told them, and then he got told.
Exactly. These are a small town detective would start pulling at these strings in an interrogation room and really make him look silly.
And again, looking at it from the totality of the circumstance, it's just way too early to be certain that the person that you just shot is Osama bin Laden, which is exactly, again, going back to Matt's story, which is exactly the way Matt termed it. It's way too early, literally seconds after a shooting, to know that for sure that's the guy that you just shot.
And if he's not going to be happy about me pulling up the Lipscomb University one, he's really not going to like this one. This is one I'm sure he wishes would just go away. He's probably happy that it was a 60 Minutes Australia interview. I'm guessing maybe he did the Australia interview because Matt Bissonnette beat him to the 60 Minutes America interview. He does the 60 Minutes Australia interview, and I said, and it's funny you mentioned it, that he doesn't do well when he gets questioned, And what you mean by that, what you said, is he immediately goes back in his circle. He doesn't want to get off. He doesn't want to get off topic. He probably learned. Excuse me. He probably learned that the hard way in 2017, talking to 60 Minutes.
This is my favorite interview.
Australia,
and this is where we're gonna need. Definitely,
This one, to be honest with you, is hard to watch. We don't need an expert for this one, but I'm so glad he's here. Let's see how Rob does when he's questioned about his story.
And I think other guys should tell their stories. If they're doing good work for people and no one's in danger, then they should be able to write books, I think.
It's also been written that it was the point man who shot him first.
I don't know if the point man didn't shoot when I was there, and when I got there, we went up the stairs. The point man jumped onto. They did say he took a shot up the stairs. When I saw bin Laden, he was not hit. He was standing at 2 feet, and so I've got to assume I shot him the first 2 or 3 times.
I don't honestly.
You see that blank stare for like a second and a half?
I have to. Let me just walk through it just for a second, and then I want to give it over to you. I'm sure you may have an opinion about this, but let's just.
Emotion by SEALs. So I don't know what that's all about. And I think other guys should tell their stories if they're doing good work for people.
I think he actually starts his stuttering when he gets questioned about should you have come out. He's very uncomfortable with that question. And so he's already on his heels.
When no one's in danger, then they should be able to write books, I think.
It's also been written that it was the point man who shot him first.
I don't know if the point man didn't shoot when I was there, and when I got there, I said what I saw. When we went up the stairs, the point man jumped onto. They did say he took a shot up the stairs. When I saw bin Laden, he was not hit. He was standing at 2 feet, and so I've got to assume I shot him the first 2 or 3 times. It's painful to watch, honestly. Him struggle that hard. He goes from always when he's in rhythm. He goes, I shot him in the face twice, 2 to the face. He fell. I shot him a 3rd time in the head, and I moved them all. And in fact, even the moving them all story is off. There's other stories where he says Amal fell into my arms. There's stories where he says, as I moved them all, I shot him. Well, you can't do both. And there's other stories where he says, I moved them all, and I shot him. He's wildly inconsistent with the Amal story, but he's very consistent with him taking 3 shots, and now he doesn't know if he took 2 or 3 shots, and now he has to assume that Osama bin Laden was not hit before he got there. You show this, that you show a 2023, 2022 interview of Rob O'Neill unquestioned, and he's polished.
Right.
You get this thing a few years earlier, and you question him. It seems like he falls apart. What's your take from it?
Well, as you pointed out, Brent, you really don't have to be a deception expert to see the stress and anxiety there, which, again, the key, of course, whenever you look at something like that, the key is putting the stress or anxiety in context. And in context of this particular question, you have deception, because that's what you have here. and it's littered with deception. Not only do you have a very high blink rate, you have several extended blinks, which is a sign of anxiety. Again, that in context is deception, because he knows he has to be deceptive there. And you have he says the personal pronoun I 7 times. I counted in the first 10 seconds. And then of course you have the stuttering, then the part of course about, well, I have to assume that I'm the one. Well, why would you have, if what you're saying is, why would you have to assume you were there? And if you took the shots, then why would you have to assume? And now he's saying that again, which is definitely a contradiction of the previous version or subsequent, anyway, version of the event. I don't know which interview came first, that the point man didn't shoot, which is in direct conflict to what Rob has stated previously or subsequent.
Right. I've seen this a couple times, and he bounces back and forth, and he goes, well, he didn't shoot. Well, he didn't shoot when I was there, as if to kind of cover his basis, about him shooting or not shooting. He just couldn't be any more wishy-washy during this whole process once he gets questioned.
Yeah, he's obviously the question, and it's not even a difficult question. It's a question that the interviewer asks here, and obviously a deceptive response. No question about that. In fact, I'm going to use that in my class.
Really?
Oh yeah, there's no question. Yeah.
I thank you for your time and not be offensive, but you weren't there. How can you have an opinion on it?
Because that's what we do.
It's funny because Rob's stories conflict Rob's stories more than any other stories.
Right.
That's absolutely true.
When someone tells a truthful story, when someone tells a truthful version of an event, there's no problem with additional details being mentioned in the story as long as those details don't contradict or conflict with the previous version of the event by the same person. And you don't expect multiple people of the same event to give you the lockstep same version because they have different perspectives. And that's fine, but it's when that a story A cannot be true if story B is true.
Yeah.
Right.
That's when you have to resolve the issue. And that is certainly littered with deception. You don't have to be an expert, like I said, with a statement analysis or body language to see the deception there.
Well, it's really good to have someone put it and articulate how, because we just knew, we knew he was lying.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Listen, I always tell people that to take my class, right? It's one thing to know that someone, you think that someone is being deceptive, but the difference in having this training or having that background is you can articulate exactly why it is, where the deception is. And there's no question, not just the stuttering, the heavy blink rate, the extended blinks, which is not something he was doing beforehand. This is totally triggered by this question. And the heavy use of the personal pronoun I. People don't just talk like that. It's you're under high anxiety or stress, and it's I, and it's a stutter, and it's a high use of the personal pronoun I.
Well, that's. I hope we did a good job of really laying this out. I hope everyone stayed with us. During this is a little bit longer podcast than you normally do, but I felt
this is going to be fun.
I felt it important to come back on your podcast, and it's where it started. It's where I felt like it should continue.
I feel like this is probably just the beginning. If I had to guess, not saying it's going to blow up, Fox News is going to be covering up, but I do believe that this is starting to open a lot of doors. And if to anybody listening or watching, if you could not be upset that you were lied to, and don't let that cloud just critical thinking, because everybody, if everybody was open to this, Shawn Ryan would have to be like, fuck, I just did one of my best episodes off a lie. We met, or not met, but we went to street cop training where he did a huge "I killed Bin Laden" speech for an hour, and thousands of cops were like, "Oh my God, it's Rob!"
Stood and gave him a standing applause.
And
stood in line to take pictures with him.
Everybody's going to have to go. Okay, I'm not. If you're going to be mad at anybody, don't be mad at the messenger,
and that's not and he's going to come back and say it. That's not a jealousy thing. I looked at that not as a jealousy. Like, oh, I wish that was me. I was in the Delta Force. It was disgusting to me that many people believe that that's the truth, and I knew differently from his own teammates and from the other men that were on that mission. Do not twist this into something that it's not. I'll tell you one more thing. I actually kind of didn't know if I was going to mention or not, but I will. Let me tell you something an innocent person doesn't do. They don't text the podcast and say, "Hey, why would you say that about me?" I'm paraphrasing this. You can post it from Rob O'Neill and say, "We need to talk about this. There's a way that both of us can win."
Yeah. So
Is that what he said?
Well, so one thing I've told people in messaging that I won't ever post an inbox, a direct message. That's more my moral compass. I won't ever, no matter what. But I will talk about it. And what he said was really like he was upset. Like, how could you guys do this? You know, it was like something. And I said, hey man, well, we want to talk. And yeah, essentially he said, we can all prosper. I don't know how he thought it was going to happen. Like how, if you were going to lead him in and then let him go. But
I don't know. And I'll tell you, I understand that you may think it dirty to do that, but then you're no better than the SEAL Team 6 guys who knew the truth but wouldn't stand next to me with it. Not to put you on the spot, but I can't sit here and say, yeah, Rob O'Neill actually messaged you and said, hey, we need to talk about this. We can both profit from it, or you'd have to remember the words he
I don't remember.
he used. We can both come out ahead on this. I'll challenge you to think about that. Otherwise, it goes back to Brent said something but then can't back it up. I know and
Right.
No pressure.
Well, I just want to say I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't know Brent. I didn't know Brent before this. Brent simply asked me to, knowing my background or hearing about my background and skills, asked me to take a look at it, and I did. And I'll tell you what, if I would have found no signs of deception, I would have come in and said, I don't see any signs of deception. But it's not just when you're talking about the validity of somebody's story, you also look at consistencies. And is the story consistent? A truthful story is consistent. And again, not to say that different details can't be added or additionally, that's fine, as long as they don't conflict with or contradict another version of the event, particularly again by the same person. Then you have issues as well from a consistency standpoint.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the last thing I want to say, and I think it's the best way to end this podcast. I opened it up this way. Yes, I made a couple comments, of making a few jokes or light of this conversation because you go through this, you keep it a little bit lively. But the truth is, Rob, this isn't personal. And I know you're going to look at this and you're immediately going to say, hey, how do I go into damage control? How do I cover this up? Or how do I move from here? And the truth is you don't have to. Man, you've been living with this for 10 years. And I know you've always been worried the truth is going to come out. And it always has, but it's never really caught traction. This is going to catch traction. I'm here to tell you. And I know you feel cornered and you don't know, like, how do I get out of this? Hey, America loves a redemption story. You can come out. I will come out. You're right. There is a way we can both come out ahead on this. I will be right next to you as a tier 1 operator in arms, an Army guy and a Navy guy, and I will stand next to you when you tell the truth and be like, man, yeah, I'm sorry. The truth just kind of got away from me, and I started down this road I never intended. I'll sit there next to you and give you a huge hug. I'll take you out for a beer. This is not personal. Rob, I've messed up in my life. I am far from perfect to sit here and call you out for not being perfect. That is not what it is. I know you think you have this legacy that you feel is going to crumble. You're opening up a brewery. Who's going to come to a brewery of a guy who wasn't honest about it? Who's going to, they have my uniform at the Twin Tower Memorial of the guy who killed bin Laden. I'm telling you, more importantly, you're a father and you have to look at your kids and tell your kids by looking in the eye that, hey, there was a time when the hard right was the hardest thing you ever did in your life. But you look at them and you say, but you know what? I did the right thing. And I'm here to tell you, as a community, you don't have to be shunned. I will guarantee, I can guarantee you right now, the Delta Force community will welcome you back with open arms. And I'm positive the SEAL Team 6 community will as well. Please, it's not too late. You can come out. You can tell the story like it is. And I assure you, you will not be punished for doing the right thing.
And if you don't, Brent will kill me, take my phone, and post your DMs.
It's not true.